All
And
right, are we ready?
yes.
Okay, my name's Eric Windmill. I'll tell you a bit about what we're going to talk about and myself first, but I guess the big caveat to this whole thing is I made slides, but they're really just notes so I can remember what to say. So this should be more of like a Q&A. Or if you don't have to ask me questions, I can just talk for an hour because I can do that. But just if you have any questions at all, feel free to stop me, ask questions. And so I am going to talk about what I suppose many of you all are about to try to do, and that is getting your first job. And the thing to know up front is that it sucks and it's harder than learning how to code because you have to get rejected a lot, and that doesn't feel good. But it's possible, and you will do it. I know lots of people have gone to boot camp. I went to boot camp, and everyone I know has eventually got a job. So a little bit about me first. I went to App Academy in San Francisco about 3 years ago, I guess now. And I was living in San Francisco already at the time, and I'm not sure, I'm not really sure how a lot of the boot camps or boot camp that you all go to, how they work. So could be a little different. App Academy is like kind of one of the heads down 12-hour days for 12 weeks. You do nothing but sleep and learn how to code. And then after that, which is the reason why I chose to go to App Academy, is they have a like really intense job search program where they just really supportive and help you and like give you all the resources you need, and they have people giving you feedback and just all this stuff. And it was really invaluable. Not only, also because sometimes you're like sad because you thought you were about to get an offer and then they gave it to someone else. So just having it was like a really nice support system. And so with all that in mind, that is kind of the motivation for doing this. And I help people privately also quite a bit. And I just will say I know what you're going through or about to go through. And so, if you have any questions at all. And okay, so I went to App Academy eventually, and now fast forward years, I'm about to start my second full-time job. It's actually in this building, Green Bits. They make POS for weed stores. The engineering is actually not in this building, but the rest of the Portland office is. And I'm starting that next week. I've worked for the past 2.5 years or so at a company in town called AppTree. It's a really small startup. There's like 10 of us when I left a couple weeks ago. And also, I am writing a book about Flutter, which is what I was going to talk about today, but I just didn't think that would be really valuable because you don't need to be learning another new technology right now. But it's a cross-platform platform, and so that's kind of what I do. I build apps, mainly front end. Lots of web development too, but a little bit of back end stuff. And yeah, so that brings me up to where I am today. And so now I will start the slides. That sentence is probably really confusing right now, but that is the title of my talk, The Least Fun Thing You'll Ever Do. And I mean that sincerely. So again, these are just like notes. I wouldn't pay too much attention to them, but so they're basically I've split this into a few parts, applying what your portfolio and resume and all that stuff looks like, and then the interview process itself. And applying is the most important by far. And the two things that you should take away of everything that I'm going to say today, the two most important things are that applying is a numbers game. I applied to literally over, I can't remember the number, but it's either over 100 or 300 jobs. Granted, I was in San Francisco, where every single person that you see on the street works in tech, so there's just jobs and jobs and jobs and jobs everywhere. So you might not have that same experience here in Portland. I had a pretty easy time getting a job in Portland too, when previously all I'd done is some contract work. So it might be a little different, but it is definitely a numbers game because just for so many reasons. So the most important thing you can do is just apply to as many jobs as possible. And then the other really important thing is to ignore qualifications, because they are baloney, basically. This book that I am writing is about Flutter, which is, it became stable in December. So, and I started working on it. So long story short, companies can start using it now since December, and I see job postings that are like 5 years experience with Dart and Flutter. It's like, that doesn't even make sense. And so the people that are writing these job qualifications are like a hiring manager that's just like, this is my ideal candidate. And then they give that to a recruiter who goes and types it up. And it doesn't mean anything. Obviously, if you have all those qualifications, great. It's a great opportunity, but it doesn't mean anything. And so now I would like to show you. Oh no. I think I got it out of order somehow. How do I? Let's see. Yes. All right, so let's start here. So this is the job qualifications for my first job, first full-time job, I should say. That wasn't just contract work. Several years experience with, front-end technologies, including Angular, and I had 0 years experience. And I've never written a single line of Angular. Let's see, experience with IntelliJ or any other JetBrains IDE. I had never heard of that. An interest in databases and some SQL experience. I still don't have any SQL experience.
Wow.
Yeah, so desire to learn Dart, Angular, Dart, and Flutter. I had never heard of Dart, Angular, Dart, or Flutter. Some exposure to or the ability to quickly learn to interact with the iOS and Android SDKs. Didn't know what SDK stood for at the time, and still have not learned to write iOS and Android apps. Track record of teaching, blogging, and public speaking is a plus. What did I write? I once blogged for a winery for like $50. Oh, that's another important thing about my background that I guess I'll get to, but just to set the scene. App Academy is really tough. You have to apply, it's like a job interview just to get in. And so because of that, most people in my cohort were electrical engineers. They went to Berkeley for something. They all have these very scientific backgrounds. I was a sommelier. I sold wine to rich people in San Francisco for a living, which is very, 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 very far from software engineering. And I still got a job. So that's important because a lot of people think that their background is hurting them. All right, so far, the whole point is apply a lot and ignore the qualifications. And so now we'll just talk about application materials. I don't even remember what I wrote on this. Cover letters are super important sometimes. I have a little anecdote about that. My job at AppTree, which was my first full-time job, they hired me because I wrote a really good email to them. It's a very small company, so they don't have an official application process. On their site, it just says send us your resume. And I just wrote this really long email with screenshots of apps that I've built and what my skills were and what I like to do. It's just a really long, pleasant, not professional email, just hey, how's it going? So in that case, the cover letter was super important. I've also applied or interviewed at Google twice, got denied twice, but on their application process it says, please don't submit a cover letter because we're not going to read it. So I guess, which is really honestly awesome because I can't tell you how much time I wasted in writing cover letters that never got read. But I guess this is an anecdote or a theory, I suppose. The smaller the company, or if you have direct access to a hiring manager or engineer or something like that, write a cover letter. If you're applying to Facebook, don't write a cover letter. It's not going to get read. So that's all I'll say about that. Portfolio site. I work with people quite a bit who are looking for their first job, and they always want me to review their portfolio site. And a portfolio site is important, but you need to consider the audience. It's recruiters, hiring managers, not tech people. They don't care about CSS animations. You don't need to. They care about getting the information about you very, very quickly. They're not going to spend more than a couple seconds looking at your portfolio site, looking at your sample apps that you've made. They're not going to like read long descriptions about how you built something and implemented React hooks or whatever the new hot thing is. They don't care about that. They just want to say, oh yeah, that looks nice, and here's his qualifications or her qualifications. There's no they're not generally. That said, your portfolio site should list buzzwords like JavaScript, .NET, whatever it is. List your skills, because the recruiter knows those words because the engineer told them to know them. But you don't need to give a long description. That stuff belongs more in GitHub on your READMEs, and I'll get to that separately. So basically, don't spin your wheels on a portfolio site. Just get a Squarespace, or like use Jekyll, which has themes, or Gatsby has a lot of themes. Really easy, get it up there. I use Gatsby for my site, which is it's like a site. It's just a really easy way to make a site that you write React. So it's just not worth wasting time on that. GitHub, I don't know if green squares matter. When I went to App Academy, they told me I had to commit stuff every day because green squares matter. That being said, I've never looked at someone's green squares. I don't know if you guys even have GitHub accounts, but like it shows the days that you've been committing. I've never looked at that on anyone's profile ever, and I don't think it matters. In fact, most companies out there, any company that doesn't open source their software, that's not going to show up anyway. So if you need to have a blank spot for 6 months because you work for a company that doesn't let you show your code publicly, you're not committing to some private version control. So I don't know if they matter, but you should have a GitHub profile that has work in it. That matters more. LinkedIn is the my least favorite thing, but it's also super valuable. If you go on there and click, I'm searching for a job, and you put a really good LinkedIn profile that's like, hey, I like doing this, and you put a lot of buzzwords in there, JavaScript, whatever, React, whatever it is. When recruiters go to search for people, they search for like JavaScript. So those buzzwords matter. They get you found. Like 99% of job interviews that I've had, whether they worked out or not, or that I just wasn't into, have come from a recruiter who messaged me on LinkedIn. So take it seriously. Unfortunately, I don't want it to be this way, but it's the world we live in. Yeah, resume should absolutely include buzzwords, and the cover letter if you're going to submit one. And the reason is because of bigger companies don't read these. They send them through a piece of software that parses out relevant, if they're trying to hire like a front-end developer and your resume says like a lot of stuff about Java and C++, then it goes through that software and comes out the other side and says like, nope, no matches. So include the buzzwords of the skills you actually know, because that could increase your chances of actually getting in front of a recruiter. That said, do not put anything on your resume that you aren't comfortable talking about, because that will backfire. It has backfired for me. I really just embarrassed myself, but I was applying. I interviewed for a while with Nike, and yeah, they kept sending me like these Java and Node code tests to like do it, and it's not me. It's not outside my wheelhouse. And I was like, yeah, I can figure this out, and I just never turned them in because they have a time limit. I didn't figure it out at the time. So anyways, they wouldn't have sent me those if I didn't say like, oh yeah, I know Java, because I wrote Java for about a week at my job once on our home legacy app, but I don't know Java. So I don't know, be honest, I guess. Yeah, there's just examples of things that you could definitely put on there. Just anything really. I guess I already talked about that out of order, but bigger companies, buzzwords matter more, and cover letters don't matter because they're probably not going to see them. Smaller companies, cover letters matter a lot, and they should be personable. I have a whole thing that I'll share a link to about cover letters and resumes that I shamelessly stole from App Academy, so don't turn me in. But once you go there, you have access to their GitHub forever. And so I copied them to help someone else, like to show someone else. And so I will share a link to that. And it's really good advice, but we don't need to talk about. All right, so assuming that you get get your resume in front of somebody, which is very, very hard. Then what comes next is the phone interview, and these are the 4 things that I think are very important for someone looking for early in their career. Tell me about yourself, or what have you been doing, what have you been up to the last couple of years, all this stuff. What they really mean is like, what is your story? What is everything you've worked on? If this is your first job, how did you get to applying for a job? Like, how did you learn? For me, when I was starting out, I had like a crafted story about, which is true, but like it wasn't false. You shouldn't make up a story, but it was like a crafted go-to answer about, what I was doing. I was like working in wine, and then XYZ eventually got to App Academy. And that story matters because they know that they're not looking for an expert. They know who they're hiring. They know they're hiring someone that is having a good, looking for a first job or second or whatever it is. So they care more about, if they're even talking to you, they care more about you as a person. They don't expect you to be an expert. If they do, then it's too late, you're dead in the water. And so tell me about yourself. There's some version of this in every phone interview of all time. Like the phone interview that I had a couple weeks ago that got me the new job, some version of that. And eventually you don't talk about pre-engineering life, but for now it matters because it just shows that you're a real person, I guess, and that matters a lot. And then own your story. I have a good anecdote about this. When I was applying, trying to get my first job, I left App Academy out of some resumes and put it in some, just to see if there was a bias against bootcamp grads, which I can say in confidence there is not in Portland. And San Francisco, it's kind of the old guard. Some of the older folks are not cool with it because, they're probably bitter because they went, spent 4 to 8 years spending $100,000 to get CS degrees. And so they're like, can you just learn this in a week and then come get a job? Anyways, and I was in a final interview, like on-site interview one day at a pretty big company, a job I probably would have took had I gotten it. And the last person I talked to was the CTO, and I mentioned App Academy, and he was like, oh, you went to App Academy? He's like, yeah. He was like, oh, I didn't see it on your resume. And I was like, oh yeah. I was like, trying to make a joke about it. I was like, oh, A/B testing, seeing if there's a bias towards it, and that killed it, just dead in the water. He was like, I don't care if you went to App Academy, but I care that you are ashamed of it, And I was like, well, I'm not ashamed. I'm just afraid that people are. But anyways, long story short, don't get yourself into a situation where you're can't be truthful, because that's just life, I guess. I don't know. I don't know who I am to tell you that. You guys all know that, but it's just learn from my mistakes. So that's the biggest thing about phone interviews and resumes and everything. Just craft a story ahead of time that is only a couple minutes long, and then stick to it and tell it, and be proud and confident also. Be very confident when you're telling that story, because if you feel like you don't deserve to be there, then they're certainly not going to think you deserve to be there. And then the other two parts, or two parts of phone interviews are technical questions, which I don't know how much or little you will know, so just stop me if you've heard this before, but it's just questions, just one-off, explain a closure in JavaScript. I don't know if you're applying for a JavaScript role, just things like that. I have, in that same repository that has resume and cover letter stuff, I have links to a bunch of really good GitHub repositories that kind of show you what to expect. But the technical questions, they aren't something you should worry too much about, because, especially in Portland. If you're planning on applying for jobs in like San Francisco or LA or New York, then maybe they, but most job interviews up in Portland, they really just want to like get to know you on the phone interview. But if it comes up, you shouldn't worry about it too much because they're not really, Nike's got to be one of the biggest employers of engineers in Portland, and they didn't ask me a single technical question on the phone. But that being said, expect them. And then finally, what questions you should ask. This is something that they'll always say, so do you have any questions for me? And I personally have found, App Academy kind of gave us these stock questions like, what's your stack? What technologies do you use? Stuff like that. I actually don't think that I don't know what's happening. There we go. I don't think that that's very good advice. I've had much better luck asking the question that I always ask because I actually care is, like, how do you like working with people you work with? Like culture questions, because those matter more to me. But also, like, what's your stack is just like not a good question, I guess. Like, what technologies do you use? Well, if you apply for the job, you probably should know because they're listed on the job interview. So I ask questions about, kind of giving the interviewer an opportunity to talk about themselves. Like, do you like working? What do you like about working here? What projects do you guys work on, or something? Give them like a chance to brag a bit about the stuff they do and the people they work with. And you can also learn a lot about whether you want to work with them or not, depending on what they say. So again, take it with a grain of salt. That's just my personal experience. Anytime I try to ask about specific technologies, they're just like, it's just not a very conversational question. You can list it and be like, okay, cool, which isn't great. And so on-site interviews, I also don't know how familiar you all are with these, but these are very infamous in tech. And the really, really good news is that they're nothing here in Portland like they are in San Francisco. All the horror stories you hear about like whiteboarding and having to like traverse graphs and like on a whiteboard and like write all this crazy convoluted CS code on a whiteboard. I've never had to do that here, which is great. I've had to do a lot in San Francisco, but it is possible. Like, I think at my first job, the only question they asked was just like, how would you write a function that that checks to see if a Sudoku board is solved correctly, which is, I mean, that's hard. I wouldn't be able to do that right now without like thinking about it, but it's nothing compared to like what they'll have you expect you. You don't have to know like computer science to do that. And Sudoku, like the number game, yeah, like write a function to see if that's solved. And I didn't even finish it. I was just like talking about it and like writing some pseudocode. It was on Skype, and they were just like, "Yeah, that's cool. I just want to see how you approach it." It's very laid back here. And then I've also interviewed at Greenbits, Nike, and New Relic. So New Relic is like, in my opinion, probably the coolest company in Portland, and they're big, and they have a ton of money and engineers and stuff, and I didn't have to whiteboard there. It's just, I'm sorry, I gotta keep my hands over here. And Nike, same thing. It was just like, they really just want to know your background, so they're just sussing out what you know. Greenbits was a little bit harder, but they're based in San Francisco. But it was like, they showed me it was also on Skype because they're in San Francisco and I'm here, but they had like a little sample small node project, and they just were like, make this HTTP call work, and it was like real easy. And then, so not like a whole lot of algorithm stuff. That's the point, I guess. All the coding interviews I've had in Portland are not algorithm stuff. They're like actual stuff to prove that you know what you're doing at work, because you're not writing algorithms at work. We're not intellectuals. We don't work in academia. We write code, and so that's good because that means it's not stressful. You don't have to like study for this like abstract thing that you're never going to use. That being said, implementation does matter, and so there are resources out there that you should use in the repository. I have a bunch of resources, but I just wrote Interview Cake here. That's my favorite. It teaches you like basically the basics of all that stuff that you might get at Google or Facebook or Amazon, et cetera, any of the big companies, just like data structures and stuff, but it's way, way easier to digest than, say, cracking the coder in your book, in my opinion. So I'm going to suggest that, but it's not free. I don't mind. It's like a 3-month pass or something. I don't remember how much it costs, but it's not necessary. But that's my favorite, personally. And then the other thing that I want to talk about is Googliness, because I don't know how else to say it. This is obviously only a thing I Google, but it matters a lot. At an on-site interview, you might have to write some code, and it's going to be nerve-wracking, and you might not solve it, and you might feel bad, but just being a normal person that they would want to work with matters 10 times more than that, especially in Portland. I'm going to keep saying that a lot because the job search in Portland is like just a totally different and much more approachable beast. It's not like cutthroat like it is in SF, but a company knows, I've said this already, but a company knows who they're hiring. Like if you go work at Nike, they know they're hiring a junior. So if you're someone that is smart and they would want to talk to you every day, that's likely enough. And so I guess just don't rely entirely on your technical skills. Be like a cool person that people want to work with, and be confident. The confidence is like a huge, huge factor. And then whiteboarding practice, if you do, I don't know if you guys do that or not here, we have to do it at Academy constantly. If you are going to go try to work for a bigger company, then that is going to ask these questions, or even a smaller company. I mean, I had to do some easy thing for green bits, like a algorithm, but it was very simple, but I can't remember what it was. But anyways, whiteboarding practice, it helps a ton because, I don't know, it's just a different, weirder thing coding in front of somebody who's judging you than on your computer and your IE, like with Google and all that stuff. So help each other out with whiteboard practice. It's also fun if you happen to like computer science stuff. So that's all about that for now, etc. This is going to be my favorite part. Like I said, I help people quite often. There's a couple people that I've spent a lot of time with, both on email and in person, like helping them find that first job. And these are the things that are always talked about and that I recommend, but there's a huge caveat to it. So first, I'll group like Twitter, blogging, and meetups into one. Those 3 things are not necessary, but they do help. But what you should be doing on any of them is not, don't blog and be like, I'm going to write the perfect article about React hooks, because it's apparent if you don't actually have like the depth of knowledge that it would be required to write a really great article on React hooks. So if you want, like, blogging and Twitter should be about connecting with people. So like ask questions. If you don't have to blog at all, I'm just saying, if you do, write it from a perspective of somebody that is new. Don't like say like, oh, I'm going to learn this thing now, and maybe I'm going to build a project and use React hooks, and I'm going to explain how I did it, because that is better than saying like, this is how you do it. Say, this is how I did it, and that shows that you. The thing about Twitter and blogging in meetups is like meeting people makes everything easier and more fun, I would say. It shows that you care, you have, you know, you want to be doing this, which is big. You like spending time writing a blog post is just a sign that you are willing to, you know, learn and you like learning and you like coding and all that stuff. And so the whole point of this slide is things that you should be doing outside of your resume and portfolio site. And then, so some other suggestions. My favorite one is open source software. If you can contribute to open source, that is so much more impressive than building an app, because it shows that you know how to, the workflow. Not only are you writing code, but you're also like using Git, and you know, GitHub is the tool for the whole industry, like, and it's only growing now that Microsoft bought it. And that's seems trivial, but it's really not. It's really not, because that's not the kind of thing that somebody wants to be teaching someone how to do on the job. That's like baseline knowledge. So open source is a good way to do that. I once heard an interview with Matt. I can't remember his last name, but he's the founder and CEO of Automatic, which is a company that makes WordPress. And they, you know, like some 27% of websites on the internet are built on WordPress. So he is a big player in the game, and he's also just one of my favorite people alive. But somebody in an interview asked him, like, what about Bootcamp? What about Bootcamp grads? And he's like, you know, they're actually pretty impressed with them. Some of them are better to start working than CS grads, because they know like the actual thing, not theory. He's like, but the only way they can really set themselves apart is open source. That's the best way. You've got to do it. Take that for what I never contributed open source before I got a job, but now I kind of wish I had, because you'll learn a lot more, and it'll take a lot less time than building an entire like web app. And I will also share resources on that, because open source is scary. I still hate putting PRs into other people's stuff, because I don't know, it's scary and I don't want to mess it up and I don't want to be judged. But there's like some nice websites. I think First Timers Only is one of them. That's just like, points out, this is a repository. Oh, you like Ruby? Go contribute to this. It's like a great place for beginners to contribute. And then other than that, you know, build things. Build all the things. That's how you learn way better than not building things. Build sites for people you know. I don't know why I included that, but you know, you can call that a client. Even if it's your mom. Say, yeah, I built this website for my client, mom. And that stuff does matter, because, again, all people really care about in this industry is, can you get the job done? Not, or can we teach you to get the job done? Not like, do you have 10 years of experience? And so, with all that in mind, the most important thing to not do, and I cannot say this enough, is everything. You can't. There's not enough time in the day. Even if you don't have a job, job search is your full-time job. You don't need to like be blogging and contributing open source and writing new apps and, you know, trying to get 1 million Twitter followers and all these other things. And the reason you don't need to do that, because if you're doing that, it's so that you don't have to apply for jobs. And none of that matters if you're not applying for jobs. Don't do it everything. Just like apply for jobs, choose one thing that you're going to work on, like an app or open source or whatever it is, and study for interviews. That's the 3 things that matter, I think. Oh yes, this is how many hours per day. If it was your full-time job, this is how important I think things are, personally. And I'm going to say something about meetups really quick. Meetups are really important because you meet. Every meetup I've ever been to, that other than like the one that me and my friend have, which is totally different, but every like big talk one I've been to, there's always somebody in the beginning that's like, hey, we're hiring a React developer or whatever, and you know, even if they're like, oh, sorry, you don't have enough experience, just talking to those people and seeing what they're looking for is really, really valuable. So I don't know. That's my asterisk about meetups. Yeah, so this is kind of a joke, but literally what I just want to convey more than anything is that applying, the only people I've seen that have not been successful in getting jobs are people that are like, I just got to get my portfolio perfect before I start applying for jobs. And it's never going to happen. I still mess with my portfolio like weekly, and nobody cares. No one's looking at it. I don't need it to get a job, but it's just like there'll always be something to fix. There'll always be like, I'm not ready to turn this in until I write this blog post on React so that they know that I actually know what I'm talking about. It doesn't matter. They're not reading it. None of that stuff matters. You should be applying only. That's the only thing you need to do. Studying for interviews matters because you don't want to get to the interview and then not pass the test, which is going to happen a lot. I mean, I've probably been to 20 on-site interviews in my 3 years, and I've gotten offers from 4, and which is another asterisk side point that I would say is it's going to happen, and it's going to feel bad, but like it's going to happen for the rest of your life. So just don't let it get you down because they're not turning you down. They're saying we interviewed 10 people and you're only one of them, and we thought that this one person had the best qualifications or was the best fit. So it's not saying a straight up yes or no to you. It's like there's these other variables that matter. So just get denied and keep going. That's really what it takes. And one day you'll get a job that you really like, and you'll be very happy that you got denied from those other jobs. But anyways, all right, so that's pretty much it. So I'm going to leave it to questions. And just the last things I'll say is feel free to email me, like dead serious. Say, hey, take a look at this cover letter. Or do you think my portfolio site looks good? I'm absolutely serious. Just say that where I perhaps met you, so I know who you are. But that's all. I'll talk to you anytime. I know the process and it sucks and I've done it, and so this is the least I can do is help people. And then the other thing that I will push is Askadev. That is a meetup around, well, Askadev is a nonprofit, I suppose, that my friend / coworker at my new job that I'm about to start started, and it's just basically meetups all over the English-speaking world, I suppose. And basically, we every other Thursday, right over at Pioneer Place we work. It's just me and him. We sit there. A few people come. Some people ask for job search advice. Some people are like, hey, I've been working on this thing for work, and I'm just like beating my head against the wall trying to fix this bug, and I can't figure it out. Just help just to get some extra eyes on it. There's not really a format. It's not talks. It's basically just like a small group of people sitting around helping. And the best, most fun part about it is sometimes 2 people will come that are both looking for help. And someone will say, hey, I need help on this Rails thing. And I'm like, I don't write Ruby. I don't know how to help you with that. And then someone else who is there to get help ends up helping them. That's how it basically always works, because my knowledge and Kim's knowledge, who started Askadev, is limited to our experience. But I would say we get a lot of people, a couple people every week that are just like, hey, can you help me? I'm looking for a job. Give me some advice. So feel free to do that. Check it out. Do it every other Thursday. Did it yesterday, so it'll be till 2 weeks. But yeah, that's it. That's all I got. Does anybody have any questions? Surely there's lots of questions.
So when you said you applied to like 300 jobs, and did you pay attention to like what you're applying to, or you just like generally if you had to do with if you had the word software developer, that's what you're applying to? Like which one were you targeting?
Well, I'd say the only thing I would say is that I was making sure that there are jobs that I could realistically pass that interview for. So App Academy teaches like Ruby and JavaScript. So I applied to jobs, Ruby and JavaScript jobs. But all of them, it's really uncommon and maybe nearly impossible to find a job that says like junior developer. So if you're just looking for a job that you think you deserve, A, you're probably wrong. You probably know a lot more than you think. And B, it's just they don't exist because job postings are all like, this is the ideal candidate. But that's not who's realistically applying. And so just apply for all of them. There's still many, many, many more software jobs than there are software developers. That is still true. There's enough jobs for everybody, and a lot of people desperately need help. So just can't hurt to just spend 4 minutes applying.
Something has come up in recent process. I'm coming in from an information systems program, but what I've been seeing out there is this laundry list of requirements, what they want to have experience for the job ahead of time. I can easily go ahead and go about 25% to about a third of that, no problem. And when I see happening, at least on the information system side, is okay, where's the demand really at? I imagine coders, they don't necessarily interact with the hardware as I would on a regular basis. But the drawback is, okay, how do you really get the experience? Because I'm facing the same problem that coders are. When you're talking about understanding learning and directly, yeah, you can do it at home. But you're not going to have the demand that's going to plunge you into an in-depth situation. Same thing with IP or commercial private networking. These are things that I can actively get into and see things, but it's kind of like you can't buy the infrastructure. You don't get the job, so you can only get the experience on the job. So what are the ways to get over that hurdle? Because I've seen these huge conundrums.
Yeah, that's the crux of the whole thing, I suppose. I can only really speak for software because I do not know anything about tangential fields. But the thing I would say is the requirements on a job posting are a suggestion, not a requirement, which sounds silly as I said it. But I am wildly unqualified for every job I've ever been hired for based on the requirements. They're just that's just the ideal, but that's not the reality. And I mean, it's going to happen a lot. You're going to apply to a lot of jobs and never hear back, but eventually, I mean, that's why it's kind of a numbers game. When you're stuck, for me, when I was starting, it was a numbers game. I heard back from maybe 1% of jobs I applied to, and even fewer.
Wow. Okay. Because I've been able to get some interview, and I recently had an interview about 3 months back. And because I started out in business, I was basically questions that I asked were more directly with the company's culture, because there wasn't a lot on the website. So I asked them how they measured their success, and they were saying, well, we're looking at kind of like going ahead and pushing yourselves into $1 billion a year. Which for software development that makes sense, but it's like what there's some kind of disconnect here because that's not what the human resources question is about. What is the culture like in terms of how do you measure success for the person in this specific goal? I couldn't get a feel on that. And the pain points that came out of it is that they're having high turnover. They suspected it was due to this large device license was a large company. And the last part was kind of surprising to me because it sounded like the question that was asked is when would you not want to use self-scientific tools certificate? And when that one was heard, my mind just kind of went, something's wrong here. walked into this kind of job, whether you're a coder or you're tech, that you're going to be able, as long as the tools work and you're front-facing situation like I would be, you can solve the problem. But if the tools don't work, something's wrong. And if there's a security vulnerability, that makes the vulnerability much worse with the product on, or perhaps with the customer's ready for that. So I thought maybe it's just better to kind of like pass this point in time. So I think it was still left with the question, could I handle this better? And
The
I
company?
didn't point these things out to them, but it's just kind of like, is there some way that you can get a better feel for the company researching it? Because the only thing that I could do is pull up their website. They didn't have much regarding the culture.
Well, that seems like a problem with that company specifically. So, I mean, if you have the luxury to walk away from it, and it doesn't make you feel good, you should walk away. But that's not my advice. That's just the life, I guess.
And
Right.
it was one of the situations where I was trying to aim for going for it,
Mm-hmm.
but they, in a day, found the dice. They said that was okay, something's going on. But I can't telegraph it because it's largely speculation. But I was trying to figure out, okay, is there something that I could have seen with this coming that I could have put my efforts elsewhere? What can be done? I'm confused. I guess what's the best way to research a company that's going to outside of websites in order to get some insight into what's going on?
That's a hard question to answer. And
I'm sorry it took me so darn long to get to it, but
I don't know if
just
there's an
rounded
answer.
up.
Honestly, I mean, I think anybody in this room could answer this as good as I could. But you know,
You talk to an employee that works there, you know,
I'll have to try that.
somewhat
So,
network.
Reviews were kind of like this. Review sites to me are kind of like another conundrum. On the one hand, yes, you have somebody who's, you have no way to check back and verify if that person is who they say they are, or if it's just the HR bringing it up.
or disgruntled employees that got fired, bringing it down.
And so, so it's hard to tell if a bad review is in fact a bad review, or if a good one is in fact a good one.
Yeah. And I mean, this is kind of a different subject, but in general, I would stay off Glassdoor because all you're going to get from them are biased reviews and false salary numbers.
Okay. Well, that's
Yeah.
a plus.
Especially in Portland.
Emotionally written reviews.
Yeah, emotionally written reviews, one way or the other. Yes.
So what job boards would you recommend?
Which job boards?
Yeah.
Well, it's hard to say exactly in Portland. So I personally have always had more luck on like it's called like PDX Tech.
PDX there?
I'm gonna have to look it up, but it's a specific. Oh, my intro. It's like, that might be it. Yeah, that's the one. These, I like these ones because it you know, it breaks it out easily, and because this lists a lot of companies that are otherwise going to fall through the cracks. This is where I found AppTree. And AppTree is very small. That was my first full-time job, and I would not have found it if I was just going through like Google Jobs or something. That being said, Google Jobs is pretty good. Let's see what Google Jobs I think is probably the best aggregate. Angel List, I don't know if that's a thing in Portland, but if it is, it's like a weird, I don't know. It's like a weird job platform. It's almost takes like a social media approach to job hunts, but it's big in San Francisco. A lot of people get jobs to that. Whenever possible, if you can find jobs on the website directly. Any job that's a small enough company that there's not an application process, just as like email me your resume, fantastic opportunity, I would say, because it's not going to slip through the software cracks. So I guess this would be my main suggestion. Stack Overflow, actually, also I would say is pretty good. Stack Overflow jobs. I know some other people at AppTree found the job through that, and I think that's because Stack Overflow jobs are likely written by people that are knowledgeable in tech, not by like a recruiter who's just like posting to a job board and doesn't know what's going on. So I suppose that would be my second recommendation, but I don't know if there's like a silver bullet.
I was actually going to ask what your experience was with AngelList, because I've had some minor success with them in the Seattle area. So yeah,
Yeah, I haven't used it since I was doing my first job hunt, but I had success with it. It actually led me to my first offer, which I turned down because neither here nor there. But yeah, so I think for startups, I think that's a really great place, in theory, to look. But yeah, again, I don't know what it's like in Portland.
and that's angel.co.
Oh, angel.co, that's what it
Anyone
is.
who's
Yeah,
interested.
Oh, thank you.
yeah. I'll lend that to this repository. Well, I haven't added anything to it yet, so I'll do that later. Yeah,
Where'd you learn about it?
I'm sorry.
Where'd you learn about it?
Where I learned Flutter? On the job.
Not
Yeah.
on any online courses.
Well, yeah, there's a lot out there. Yeah, I don't. There's a great website called flutterbyexample.com. It's mine. So, but that's what led me to get a book deal. So people seem to like it. I'm trying to redo it right now in my week off. But honestly, the beautiful thing about Flutter, my honest answer is Flutter by Example might be a little outdated because I haven't touched it since I started writing the book, and it's been almost a year. But my honest answer is that the Flutter and Dart team are like incredible about resources. Like they've put out so many videos, like tutorials. The docs are amazing. It's truly been the easiest, best community. What?
What was this?
I would just go to I think flutter.dev is their like actual homepage, and they'll have links to everything on there. Yes.
Do you feel like it's potentially worth the time in the job search to actually just show up to like the physical location, like with stuff in hand, or just to talk to someone there? Do you feel like it's something that is not great for this type of issue?
Yeah, that's really tough to say. People did that from time to time at AppTree, and I mean, I'll just tell you, it definitely got their resume in front of us, like, which is a problem with a lot of, there's no guarantee of that. So I'd say with startups, it's probably not a bad idea. There's no point doing it at like Nike. I don't even know where you'd go. But they don't have like a welcome office. But big companies, I think that it would be tough. But small companies, like AppTree, our whole office was one room about this size, the open room. So when someone walks in, like you can talk directly to the CTO. So I think depending on the company, I guess. Any other questions?
When you started applying, did you know if you wanted to do something more on the front end, back end, or did you just apply and see where you went?
I just applied and saw to see where I land, but that's actually an excellent question that I forgot to touch on. I wanted to do front end, and that's where I ended up. And now I want to go the opposite direction because the more interesting problems are in the back end. But that being said, you are much, much more likely to get a front end or full stack job for your first job. If it's specifically back end, they're almost certainly looking for people that are like have a lot of CS knowledge because that's the part of the stack where you really will need to know like DevOps and algorithms and all kinds of data structures and stuff because performance, it all comes down to like keeping things up and all comes down to like performance and deployments, and that's not so much of a worry on the front end if you're working with a team. And that's knowledge I think you can only learn by having a problem and solving it. There's not like an online course to learn. I mean, there probably are, but it's just not valuable if there's no context.
You mentioned that you had applied to a bunch of jobs at some point. Did you use like any particular apps or anything to stay organized during that time, or?
Yeah, I used Google Sheets. App Academy they have like private software that they built for that, which was helpful, but honestly, it's just a spreadsheet basically that has like a couple bells and whistles. And I did try to stay organized because I wanted to send follow-ups if I hadn't heard from them. And so it was just an easy way to say like, this is the date I applied on, this is the company, have I heard back from them? And then if the answer is no, and like it's been 2 weeks, then I'll send a follow-up. But yeah, that's what I did. I don't know if it's the best way. Yes.
When your first job was what was your goal when your portfolio was like?
My portfolio?
Yeah,
Like my portfolio website?
yeah,
It was pretty basic.
really.
Yeah.
No super bells and whistles and all that.
No, but that's also kind of just my style. Like it's just easier. But also, those bells and whistles are not important for getting your first job because you're not. I mean, I guess it's possible, but it's very, very unlikely you're getting hired for your CSS skills. Like, whether that's right or wrong, I'm not here to debate. You can check out hot takes on Twitter all day long because it's a huge debate of whether CSS is hard or not. It doesn't matter if it is because it's not what people are hiring you for. Because it's like easy to. So anyways, to get back, the portfolios the only thing that you really need to do is deliver content to a recruiter's eyeballs very easily. I mean, it should look nice. Don't get me wrong. Like, take pride in your work. That matters. But you don't need to do a bunch of like animations that take hours. All right.
All right,
So that's it.
that's it. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, absolutely.